And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the Jeff Mara Podcast. Here's Jeff.
Today's guest is Pauline Glamochak. Pauline was previously on the podcast, and we spoke about her NDEs. We spoke about her seeing negative entities encountering Jesus and the Virgin Mary. Today she returns to talk about the rest of her NDEs. Pauline, thanks for coming back and welcome.
Thanks very much, Jeff. I'm really happy to be here again.
Well, thank you, because the podcast only exists because of guests like you.
No, as I've told you, we're really, I think the whole NDE community is just so happy that you do what you do with and allow people a safe space and you treat them with respect. So, that's very much appreciated by everybody in the NDE community, I think.
Thank you very much. Before we get into your NDEs, I was reviewing our podcast together, and I didn't get to ask you this question. I wanted to ask you one question before we start. And
Sure.
You spoke about that people have a monkey mind, and I think we all have a bit of chatter going on in our mind. Some people may even say without that chatter, we kind of don't exist in this realm. And I believe you said that once you're on the other side, the chatter disappears.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment more about the chatter here and chattering disappearing there, and why do you think it happens?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that question, because even though I had an experience with Jesus, I went on to study Buddhism and to meditate. Precisely because I wanted to get back to that state of no mind chatter. And I believe it's because when we go over to the other side, we're very much in the moment. You know, everything's left behind. There's no past. We don't know where we're going to or what the future is going to be. So the experiencing of the moment is really full, you know. The perceptions that we have here, which are put upon us through conditioning, through inherited perspectives, through cultural norms and all of that, that doesn't exist once you're leaving your body and your earthly life behind. So I don't know if that sort of makes it a little bit clearer, but it is, I think that's why that Buddhist practice of meditation is really helpful. But I've also found that praying the rosary, I don't like repetitive prayer. I like to have a personal conversation. But praying the rosary also does that breath thing. And it is so much about controlling your breath. Quieting your mind. Controlling your breath means that you're actually controlling your physiology, you're controlling your body, you're taking ownership of your machine, you know, of your material self. So I hope that sort of answers the question. When you don't have your material self, you don't have all of the stored stuff that your body remembers and your mind wants to repeat to you the programming, you know. There's nothing overriding the experience of clear sight and being in the moment.
It's amazing how breath is so important with controlling your mind.
It is. It is, because I think once you control your breath, your higher self, your spirit self, is saying, I'm in charge now. You know, quiet down. I'm in charge here. I'm going to direct this show, not your reactive self. So you just expand your ability to respond to life rather than react to life. So, But as I said, that's it's not just that Buddhists do that. Hindus do that. It's a practice that all religions are familiar with, that practice of quietening the mind, being still. Yeah.
All right. Well, your first NDE, I believe you were around 10 or 11. And then the other NDE, I believe, happened in 2015-ish. So let's talk about your other two NDEs.
Right. Well, the 2015 one was the one that triggered me coming out. And, I came out about my 11-year-old one, and then it was like, well, you've actually had more than the one. And it's just given me more and more courage to talk about it. The one that I had as an 11-year-old was the most profound experience that I've had. But I also had an experience when I was 18 months, almost 2 years old. And I know they say you're not meant to remember things from way back then, but I even remember my first words spoken. So, but yeah, the experience I had as a baby, I was, just to give you a bit of context, my father was laying down. I was in my parents' bed in between them, and Mum had gotten up to do something in the kitchen. It was sort of like we were living in a bedsit kind of situation. And my father was laying down and he was smoking. And as a child, I wanted to touch I was fascinated by the red, the cigarette glow. So I took my little finger and, touched it. I was just in that baby stage of mastering my body. And so, yeah, I touched his cigarette, and immediately, obviously, it hurt and it blistered up, and I developed pneumonia from that. But I also became a left-hander from that because I touched it with my right hand. But, yeah, so I developed bacterial pneumonia from this blister and ended up very, very sick. My parents took me to the doctor a number of times, and the doctor would just say, well, it's just a cold and blah, blah, blah. But I deteriorated really quickly and ended up in hospital, and just basically had after struggling and being in a lot of pain and not breathing, it was very distressing. But then I just left my body and just felt this joy of being, I could see everybody fussing around me, but I was just so relieved and happy and light and no longer in pain. But yeah, I didn't encounter anybody. It was just purely an out-of-body experience. So that was my first near-death experience, out-of-body experience. The second one occurred when I was at school. English was my second language, so I was quite a shy child at school. Australia was a very different place back then. There was something called the White Australia policy. And really, if you were, it wasn't as multicultural a country as it is now. Now it's a very multicultural country now, thankfully. But yeah, I copped a bit of flack at school, as a young child, only 6 or 7. And like I remember once, this was very painful to me as a child, but I had this round lunchbox and it screwed on, and it was nothing like everybody's kids' lunchboxes with stickers and happy faces. Mine was grey and it had this plastic see-through lid, and Mum would make me salami sandwiches and things, things that we ate, or dried meats and, like prosciutto and those kind of European cheeses. And they're all very aromatic, we'd call them now. But to a child, to an Australian child, that was like, whoa, that was such an unfamiliar smell. And I just remember one time, this is going a little bit off track, but it might help you understand my state of being at that time. This kid, was just accosted by the smell, and he spat in my lunchbox, and this was just horrifying. I just wanted to be invisible. at school from then on, because it was just such an insult. It was so horrific a thing, to do. It was really upsetting. But shortly after that, we had a school excursion, and things weren't so run by insurance back then. It was about 50 years ago. So, about 49 years ago. And the teachers took us to the beach, a whole class. And I mean, we were grade year 2 or year 3, something like that. Yeah, towards 7 years old. Anyway, and so they took us to the beach, and it was a beautiful day, and we were sort of, they did the drill about safety, water safety, and all of that kind of thing. And we did that on the sand, and then they just let us go free, And my girlfriend and I, Clarissa Orlick, we sort of paddled in, and we went waist deep. We had no sort of fantasies about swimming or anything like that. We were both... she was Russian, I was Croatian. So, we were both also, English was our second language, so we weren't such great communicators, and we just stuck together, we were the best of friends, 2 peas in a pod. And so we were just in the water, and a rip just took our legs from under us and pulled us out to sea. And she didn't go out as far as I did, but it was completely unexpected. As a child, I didn't know about water. I didn't really, you don't understand about rip tides and such things. And I was just taken by the ocean. And tossed around, tossed and turned. I didn't have a chance to take a breath. And so basically, I think that I drowned very, very quickly. I remember opening my eyes, and it was just as though I was in a washing machine. There was just, sand. I couldn't see anything. My eyes were stinging from all of the salt water and the and so I kept my eyes closed and felt myself thud to the bottom of the sea, ocean floor. And I just felt suddenly a lot of peace. Everything suddenly quietened down. And I felt behind me as though suddenly I was held, and suddenly felt very safe and peaceful. And this feeling of warmth came over me, in safety, and there was no struggling for breath anymore. I was just told, open your eyes. And I know how it sounds, but I felt like God spoke to me, and that God was there with me in the ocean. And he just said to me, open your eyes. And I said, I can't open my eyes. It stings, But before he said that, he let me know that I'm safe and that I'm loved. And it was just this, he overcame me with this peace, this loving peace. And he just said, open your eyes. And when I eventually opened my eyes, I could see more clearly than than I could see before. And everything was really lovely. And I could see the sun shining through, and the sea was suddenly calm. Everything was calm and peaceful. And he didn't say anything to me. He just buoyed me. I just felt like I was pushed up, just buoyed up. And I came to the top, and I was just imbued with all of this calm. And I did exactly as we were told to do. I came to the top, and I just waved, and I bobbed down, and I just knew there was no struggle. I just knew I'm going to go down, and I'm going to go up again. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to go up again. And there was absolutely no panic with me. Sure enough, the teachers saw me. I was spotted, and teachers swam out and took me under the chin and swam me back to shore. And When I was on the sand, I was vomiting up water, and I was just full of water. I didn't stop regurgitating. So they took me back to school, dressed me, took me out of my wet clothing and dressed me. They used to have these spare clothes, in the lost and found. And so I was dressed up in all of these weird clothes. And I was mortified, Jeff. I was absolutely mortified that I'd drawn so much attention to myself. And, it was very, very embarrassing. So they took me home, and my parents were also, alarmed that had happened to me. But because I was so mortified, I didn't tell anybody about it, apart from Clarissa. But she didn't have the experience that I had. She wasn't taken out very far. But yeah, so they're the two other NDEs.
Are you saying that after your experience, you could see better than you were before the experience, or just better from seeing blurriness underwater?
Just the blurriness underwater. But I could feel there was I just had a different kind of, I had a sense of God. And as a 7-year-old, not that I had a sense of the kind of things that were revealed to me when I was 11 about the importance of love, and all of the other things that were revealed to me in my 11-year-old. But I had a sense of God. I knew that God was real. And I knew that he saved me, Some people sort of say, well, how do you know it wasn't an angel? I don't know. But I say God because it could have been an angel. I didn't see, he didn't introduce himself. But it was definitely, it was such an authoritative voice, and it was a voice I recognized on some level.
So even though he didn't identify himself as God, you still feel that it was?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Okay. I feel it was. Yeah.
So out of all 4 NDEs, overall, how do you feel like you've changed?
Well, as I said, I think, 3 of my near-death experiences were very loving, but it was the 4th one that changed me the most because of that encounter with malevolent beings, I think before my 2015 NDE, I was very liberal. And I still pride myself in being non-judgmental. But it did teach me about spiritual boundaries, that 2015 one, and it did teach me about cleaning the inside, constantly cleaning out the inside of my cup so that I'm not harboring any kind of heavy emotional baggage. And again, the Catholic Church, I remember Sunday school that it taught us about the 7 deadly sins. And it is like every time I feel something come up in me, whether it be anger or, dealing with it compassionately and with the loving, seeing it very lovingly, like Christ looked at me, helps me to resolve it, with the self-talk. It's like negotiating with a child who's often mistaken. It's really fortified that inner relationship with me, the 2015 one. And yet that was the briefest, most unremarkable. But the after effects were just, they carried on for so long in this realm, in worldly way. And actually my sister also has witnessed, she was allowed to witness it. So it spiritually fortified me, the 2015 experience, even though it was with negative entities. So, yeah.
After that experience, did you become more or less religious?
I became much more devoted to Jesus. I kept on falling back with the other experiences. I kept on falling back into this hypnotism, this material hypnotism, which is this over reliance on the outer world and neglected the inner world. Even though I'd had those experiences, it was only the 2015 one that helped me to, really learn about how to maintain your inner world and self-compassion and self-understanding and really loving Jesus and letting his words wash over me. So in that way, I became much, much more spiritual. But I find religion really difficult because when I've found church leadership is very challenging for me, because in my 11-year-old NDE, Jesus really showed me that everybody is so very equal. The equality of everybody. Again, that's why I went to Buddhism, because they sort of believe that, an animal's life is as precious. Jesus showed me, that every single person is precious. This kind of prejudice that we have, Muslim against Christian, against Jew, against Hindu, against, all of these kind of political religiosity, it just has nothing to do with him, who he is and what he wants for each and every one of us. So, yeah.
After all your experiences, or after one of them, did you get any abilities that you didn't have before, like precognition, clairvoyance, anything like that?
Yeah, I did. I remember this one time. It was really, I love the ones where I don't like to talk too much about it, because I don't want people to look towards me and for answers. I really like to help people to find their own answers. But I remember this one time I could be very flippant about it. And I think our connection also ebbs and flows. Our connection with the divine, with Jesus, with God, with however you want to call it. I understand it's everybody's has their own perceptions. But one time we were going to a picnic, and there was a lottery at this soccer club picnic. It was a family picnic, and my son was only, I think, 7 or 8 or so. And there was a lottery, and I just looked across at what the prizes were, and I said, they came to offer me tickets, and I said, I'm going to win that soccer ball, because I thought I wanted that soccer ball for my son. And, there were people around me, and I won the soccer ball. Mm-hmm. So I loved those instances where they're very, very little things, but when you have the courage to sort of say it out loud and other people acknowledge it, it's really gratifying. But then I don't want my ego to get in the way, because I really love my connection with Christ, and I find that if I'm not humble, I don't have it. And for me, it's more important than anything else. I don't have any other kind of nothing fulfills me like that connection. So I do have it, but if it's necessary, I'll speak about it, but I don't sort of and I respect mediums and people who do that. I know that it's very helpful for a lot of people. I don't judge anybody who does that, but for me it's not the right thing for me, because I just get too big for my boots.
What do you think about your experiences inspire you?
The most inspiring thing is I love that it gives me peace, It gives me peace, and I love that I see that it changes other people. other people's faith and other people's strength. And there's just something about, it just opens up when I share, it opens something up in people that they find the courage within themselves to acknowledge. And I think that's the greatest thing that I received from my NDE here, is seeing that little shift that takes place for somebody, where they'll suddenly appreciate their own interior life. You know, we're so programmed to look to the outside, to possessions, to body image, and to status, to popularity, to aligning with group think so that we're safe, you know. But I don't know, you know, and that sort of puts us out of alignment with our inner voice. And I really love that when I do tell, when people listen to NDEs, they give themselves permission suddenly to remember that little reminder that God sent them, or that feeling that came over them, and it was realer than, you know, as real as sight, or as real as something they've heard, or that voice inside of them. I think that's what I really love about being an NDEer, and that's the greatest gift that I've received. Look, and being around, I'm really lucky too, because I've had, life has brought me into a circumstance where I've had to live with somebody, my sister, who actually sees also more and more as she lives with me, she sees things happening, and she's seen things as well. So having that validation as well, I think, is such a gift. I would not have the courage without, for example, we were sitting there, she sits on one end of the couch. We've got, you know, one of those L-shaped modulars, and she sits in one corner, I sit in the other. We give each other a lot of space. And we're just sitting there chatting away, and suddenly this really bright golden light appeared behind her. And I think someone had just passed away in our family recently, or we were talking, oh yes, my uncle overseas had recently passed away. And so we were in mourning, and we were thinking a lot about him and his passing. And this huge bright light in our lounge room, the lights were on, but this golden bright light just flashed, and it flashed a little bit longer than a light bulb sort of flashing, or and I was facing it, and it was kind of behind her, but we both saw it, and we both said, "Did you see that?" So yeah, I think that validation, I've seen it change my sister's countenance. She's much less anxious, and now that she sort of gives herself permission to see it. It's just like with numbers, Jeff. You know, people are sort of saying, I'm seeing 1111, I'm seeing 222, I'm seeing 333, 444, 555, whatever it may be. And when you notice it and you give yourself, and you don't just say, that's just a coincidence, that's just a coincidence. When you acknowledge, I'm noticing these more frequently, it actually happens to you more frequently. And it's just like a little reminder to check in with that holy part of yourself.
So what are you saying? What does that mean when someone keeps seeing repetitive numbers, 222, 333, 444?
I think it's just the opening of your spiritual consciousness is happening. And it's happening on a massive scale now. After I came back from seeing Mother Mary's sorrow, and I came back into Jesus's glory, he told me that like more and more people would, that he would visit more and more people, and that there would be more and more people talking about, acknowledging him. In 1977, religion and spirituality, that was the domain for priests and for clergy. It was not for common people like yourself and I. It was just like a practice, something you walked, but you didn't really, it wasn't a part of who you were, really. You were busy making a buck, maintaining social contact and social relationships, getting ahead, getting the new Chrysler or whatever. So, yeah, it is happening that more and more people are noticing, and they're checking in. They're opening up. They're sort of not saying it's just a coincidence. They're prepared to let go of that dismissive attitude that the mind sort of has been trained into ignoring those kind of signs. I think it's just in different ways. I think there are different numbers have different spiritual meanings. I'm not a numerologist, but I do think that, they do represent things. I mean, numbers in the Bible represent things. We know I think of Tesla and Einstein and 369 and all those kind of things in mathematics. And numbers are relevant. And they are, because numbers are also a concept, they are also like a portal in their own way, letting once you recognize that, you recognize other things that will happen that give you kind of a sign, about something being okay or not okay, or and they just remind us to be present too.
If you met somebody who say, had an NDE last week and they had trouble coming to grips with their experience, how would you advise them?
I would advise them to talk about it and to surround themselves with people who have had similar experiences. Just don't isolate. I went through a very long period of denying it, and it does psychic damage, and it's almost like living with one hand tied behind your back. I think we're often given these experiences to supplement our lives because for whatever reason we have a rough start in life, or whatever it may be. So to deny that is almost like handicapping yourself. I understand that, there is that branch of psychology that likes to pathologize such things because it is a threat to science. It is a threat to materialist science, in a way. So I think, I would encourage them to talk about it, to join the community, to listen to your podcast, be discerning about who they share with, because after you've had an NDE, you are in a delicate state. You are in a psychologically delicate state. So, I would just encourage them to surround themselves with the right people, choose their tribe, choose their people, and listen out for similarities. When I first started researching in 2015, I don't know what I would have thought if I didn't find Howard Storm. When I found Howard Storm, it was, oh, thank goodness. So many different people have different kinds of experiences. And if you can find that experience that resonates with you, that's helpful. That's really helpful. And it helps you to integrate your experience and to accept that spiritual aspect of yourself that you've perhaps locked out or neglected. So that would be my advice to them. And if you're finding yourself down, depressed, which happens because you've come from a beautiful, divine, loving, all good feeling to this place of contrast and friction, get support. Get support. If you can't find a group, start a group. If you can't, if you can get counselling with somebody who's qualified in the field, who's had an NDE experience themselves, they're probably the best qualified people to help you. I know IANS has some people. Unfortunately, I took my experience to a particular priest, and it does a lot of damage when somebody who is assigned to the spiritual care of a flock refuses to admit that this could happen to somebody as lowly as, they take that sanctimonious thing, well, he's trying to start a new religion, or, this is against God, or so many, there's spiritual jealousy that comes into the picture, there's spiritual envy, there's all kinds of factors, and people don't know how to take it, It also depends on which stage of their life they're in. So finding somebody who's qualified insofar as they understand the phenomenon and or have experienced it themselves. So, but yeah, I'm looking to start up a group, a support group. I've done it once before, but I think I'd approach it from a different way. I was a little bit too democratic last time. So, but yeah, I think a support group is a really good thing.
I believe a lot of people come to my podcast because someone in their life, close to them, had recently passed. So what kind of reassurance can you give those people that we are eternal and life goes on and their loved one is still going on?
As far as I'm concerned, and words are not as powerful as experience, but I have no doubt whatsoever that life goes on. I have no doubt that there is just nothing bad in God. No, there is just, he loves us fully. He loves us completely, regardless of what we've done or haven't done or believed or haven't believed. His love is just so full. Now, can we keep ourselves away from his love? I think so, but I don't think we can do that forever, because the power of his love is just, it's everything. It is everything. And we're mistaken. Yeah, we can be mistaken and we can wander away from love. And actually, the word sin means mistake. And just like children make mistakes, God knows our heart. He knows things that drive us to make mistakes. He knows things, he knows how our thinking can be hijacked here, but he wants us to find our way back. But yeah, I have no doubt that sooner or later, everybody finds their way back home to God. I have no doubt that he loves everybody, just the same love that I experienced, that he has for he told me literally that he has that for every single one of us. And your departed, we recently lost an uncle. He was a Franciscan priest, actually, and we had friction, he and I, because he was very much by the letter and by the book, and I was like, well, can't you see that that's not loving, And, I was a bit of a rebel in my early years. And, well, a lot of a rebel, actually. There wasn't, I was sex, drugs and rock and roll. But, yeah, so it takes a while for us to, I don't know. I've just had so many signs from him. I just know that everybody goes there. Everybody goes there. If you believe, if your consciousness is invested in reincarnation, I believe that that's where you're going to go, because we are created in the image of God, and we do create our reality with our focus. So, but as far as his love, it's not kept from anybody who who wants that, you know. And it's just heaven is it's amazing, you know. There's just no high like it. There's nothing can compare. No love between man and woman, no love between parent and child. It is just the fullest. You're complete. Once you're in heaven, you're complete, you're happy. So yeah, I would say to anybody who is grieving and mourning. Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to say about my uncle. There was a lot of grief around it, but I just knew, you know, if there's anyone that's going to be in heaven, it's him. He was, you know, I just had no grief. I was so happy for him. And sure enough, I had a dream that, you know, he was sitting at this table and there was just celebration going on. Everyone was happy and preparing this meal and setting this table, and it was just beautiful. It was just... yeah, I had a glimpse of him in heaven in my dream. So yeah, I would just reassure people that it's very rare that people get stuck. People do get stuck, but it's very rare. And I do believe that our prayers help people to cross over as well. Our forgiveness helps people to cross over. Often the weight of not being able to forgive ourselves or forgive others, that will keep spirits here. But yeah, so working at forgiveness. When I say that, I really want to correct something about my last podcast, because it's one thing to say forgiveness, but first of all, we have to lovingly accept who we are. And that means forgiving ourselves, you know. That way we can truly extend forgiveness. So every time I feel resentment, I come to myself and think, oh, it's not that you shouldn't be feeling this. It's what's going on inside of you. What hurt part of you is appearing to be healed right now. So yeah, it's this relationship that we have to ourselves. When we connect to our own spirit, we also connect to others on that level. I think the Hindus say namaste, the divine in me honors the divine in you. And yeah, there's another truth.
To paraphrase one of my previous recent guests, she said that even though you've had an NDE, you're not a saint. You still come back and you're still a human, and you're still perhaps you're still making mistakes and doing the wrong things and still living a human life.
I don't know how much time have we got, because I've got just a short experience that I'd like to tell you about regarding that, on that point. When I was in my 30s, so I had my experience as an 11-year-old, and you'd think if you've met Jesus that you would be the most devout person ever after an experience like that. I mean, that's just, whoa, you know. But no, you come back into your earthly self, you come back into puberty and drives and social anxiety and pressures and all of that kind of thing. And you very quickly, if you're encouraged to disconnect from that side of, yourself, you turn your back on that and you look fulfillment in other things like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was 33. I'd done some things that I wasn't very proud of in my life. And I was living a very materialistic life. I'd done some things that I wasn't proud of, that were really, really played and weighed heavily on me. And I'm not going to use your program as a confessional here, but I'll leave it to your listeners' imagination. But I'd done some things, and I really thought, that I was cast out in a way. I didn't consciously think that, but I think that on some level I believed that. Anyway, by this time I was a single mother. My son was just started school, 5 or 6 years old, and my parents were going to Europe and asked if he could come with them. I was working really heavily in the family business, and So I said, yeah, okay, I thought, I don't know if I'll have the opportunity for him to go and learn another language and have all of that education that travel brings. So as difficult as it was, I said yes, but I didn't count on how difficult it would be. So I was just basically working, and I realized one night that I missed him so desperately, and I thought, oh, gosh, I've really had no love, I really don't love anybody apart from my son, and I don't experience love from anybody apart from him. And I thought to myself, what a heavy weight for a little boy to carry, And anyway, I lay on my bed. Actually, I lay on his bed, and I was just curled in the fetal position. It was I worked in a heavy industry, and it was a really stressful kind of industry too. And I was so tired and sad, just brokenhearted. I developed depression. It had gone into a kind of, it had turned into clinical depression. And I was just coming out of it and just sort of moving to the point where I could function. But this night, so I was already seeing a psychiatrist at that stage. I was seeing a psychiatrist. But this night I lay there and I was just thinking these things about love, and I just started crying and heaving from sorrow, missing my son so very much. And I thought, I felt something behind me. I didn't hear anything, but I definitely felt this pressing up against me, this warmth. And first of all, I thought, oh, that's weird. I'm feeling warm. And then it felt like a real pressing up behind me. And it was like I was being cradled. And I immediately thought, oh my goodness, I've forgotten, because we'd had a break-in in the house once before. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've forgotten to lock the house, and now I'm going to be raped. I just froze in fear because it was palpable feeling. Anyway, the next thing I knew, so I was already a sinner. The next thing I knew, I was imbued with this golden energy. And it was from the tips of my toes through the back of my spine, permeating into the front of me, into my heart. I had my eyes closed. I was frozen with fear. And then this started permeating into me. And simultaneously, this voice that I recognized said, "Be not afraid. It is I. I have not forsaken you." And after that, I was basically cured after having that experience. But after, this peace, this complete relaxation, trust, I felt him just then it was like as though once he'd given me that peace, he exited through the top of my head, and I just knew he's gone back into space. And there was just that knowing, that connection with space again. So anyway, I went to my therapist. I woke up in the morning and just felt fabulous. I felt amazing. I went to my therapist and told him about it. He was unimpressed. He said, "Oh, well, perhaps you should study metaphysics." And I could tell that he didn't believe me. But I started seeing him less and less. I sort of started noticing the way he tried to play with my mind. And eventually it came out, and he's now been disbarred because he actually was messing with his clients. He was taking advantage sexually of his clients. And now I believe that Jesus did that so that I would come out of this state of clinical depression and be safe from him, because not long after I waved bye-bye, he called me desperately, "Come back, and, this is too soon," and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so that's what I'd say to people about the love of God, that there's just, we're the only ones who can separate ourselves from it. But yeah, he's he there is nothing that we can do if we want love and seek his love. There's nothing that we can do to keep him from us. Not even what is known as the gravest sin. And I think that comes to that, saying about, every sin can be forgiven except for sinning against the Holy Ghost. And I think that is it, that when we shut ourselves off to love, to believing in that we are loved by God, the Creator, once we shut ourselves off to that, that is like the mistake that isn't forgiven because we shut ourselves off. Does that make sense?
I think so. I kind of got hung up when you were saying everything is okay except sinning against the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
I started thinking about that and I got hung up with that. What do you mean by that?
Okay. I think, the Christian tradition, it says that, every sin can be forgiven except for sinning against the Holy Ghost. And for a long time I thought, well, what does that mean?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Does that mean committing suicide? Does that mean, blaspheming against God? What does that mean? And it actually means, what I've come to understand is that it means cutting ourselves off from that divine spark of love. So becoming just cutting ourselves completely off from that. Now, very few people cut themselves off, but we can cut ourselves off by just choosing not to believe in that, choosing to believe in man-made hierarchies, choosing to believe in, not having empathy for others, choosing to be just completely material, completely pragmatically logical, worshipping money, or, completely denying our own Holy Ghost.
I'm going to have to switch gears on you here because we went right through this time pretty quickly.
We always do.
And so let me ask you this. If people want to find out about you, do you have a website?
No, they're just such a hassle to maintain. I have a Facebook page.
All right. Do you have anything that you want to promote?
Not really. I do a bit of art. I'm a counselling therapist. I do have a near-death experiences support group. So if you'd like to put the link there, again, that's a Facebook group. If you'd like to put the link there for that, I'm happy for people to stop by and to have a look, and for people to get in touch if they'd like to talk about their NDE through that avenue. But yeah, that's about all.
Okay. Well, before we finish up here, do you have one last positive message that you can share with everyone?
Be compassionate. Be compassionate to yourself. Much of the stuff of judgment and rubbish stuff that we project onto other people is actually just stuff that we haven't resolved within ourselves. So getting in relationship with yourself compassionately, accepting that you're loved, it's something that you should work on every day. You can work on every day. And it doesn't mean prostrating yourself and meditating for hours. It just means checking in regularly, noticing, acknowledging. It's really not complicated. There are 3 things you need to be spiritually connected: love, praise, and gratitude. And that's it. That's all you need to have that spiritual connection. That's all I've really got to say. I think I've said a lot.
Well, thank you so much. And Pauline, thanks again for being my guest. I really appreciate you. I wish you the best and enjoy the rest of your day.
I really appreciate you too, Jeff. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching the Jeff Mara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.